Everybody, welcome back to the Magnetic Podcast. I'm your host, Jared, and today, super excited to have on Josh Muhlbaum, Head of Brand Strategy over at 10,000. Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate you having me on the call.
Yep, we're super excited. So 10,000 is a brand. I see them all over Instagram. You guys have been blowing up. And what I would love to dive in today is just like how you ended up there, what you guys are working on now. But we'll start with kind of like your background. If you could give people listening a little bit of background on yourself, what led you into sort of the marketing copywriting world, and then how you got to 10,000 where you're at today.
Sure. I won't bore you with all the details, but basically in college, I studied at the University of Miami. I studied athletic training and human performance for a little bit, and then ended up switching majors over into communication when they started to unroll a creative advertising program. So that was something that really piqued my interest. And I kind of found myself being more interested in that in my off time, right? Like I've always felt like the things you're thinking about when you don't have any responsibilities and it's the end of the day, that's kind of where your true passions lie. So yeah, I ended up making that change. And then after I left college, I started working as a copywriter for a bunch of brands, mostly in the retail space, a few agencies as well, and then ended up in the startup game, sort of during the pandemic. And yeah, that's really when I ended up with 10,000. So yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it. You know, I was someone who had a passion for athletics and sports in general, and saw myself going in that direction. And then something kind of came and pushed me in a slightly different direction. But now I feel like all the stars have sort of aligned, and now I'm in marketing and branding and creative for a company that really values, the physical space and athletics.
When you had started working at 10,000, like I wanted to understand kind of what stage was the brand when you first started working with them, specifically as it pertains to like marketing and branding.
Yeah, so the company was very well established. It started up in 2017, and things were firing on all cylinders from a marketing perspective, from a branding perspective. Things were very cohesive, and it has kind of always had that reputation of being pretty buttoned up and pretty dialed when it comes to branding and marketing. That's kind of been the along with our emphasis on the utilization of analytics in marketing, just the branding and sort of overall tone was very dialed at that point. So I had a lot of great stuff to work with when I joined.
Well, you mentioned that their focus on athletics was kind of a really exciting prospect, because I know that you have a background in that. Were there any other reasons that kind of attracted you to the brand at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had an interest in apparel, specifically performance apparel. It's something that has always kind of just been a side passion of mine, and something that I've always been drawn to. So it really felt like that perfect sweet spot of athletics and human performance, but also fashion and branding and creativity, and this idea of sort of self-actualization, which is really core to the brand. It really spoke to me. And it came at a time where I was looking to take that next step in my career. And I was really looking to put myself in a position to have a real say and real autonomy over my work, which is something that I hadn't really had as much of in previous roles. And so jumping into a startup in this space really gave me the opportunity to have those things and explore that.
So when it comes to 10,000, obviously their athletic performance apparel, it's a space that's really crowded. Even at that time when they first started, I'm thinking, 2018 was still a pretty crowded market. How do you guys think about differentiating in that space? Because as you know, apparel is one of the toughest spaces to be in e-commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a little bit of experience with apparel. I worked with Macy's for a while as a copywriter, doing men's fashion and events and catalog and things of that nature, just really work heavy. And just having other types of exposure to retail as well, I kind of got this notion pretty early on that the retail space is really all about marketing and branding and positioning. And it's very little to do with materials and silhouettes and designs, especially when you're in a space where people are putting out a lot of very similar silhouettes and designs and using very similar materials. What differentiates a given brand in that set is the messaging and the stories that they tell and the people that they highlight And so, from my perspective, when I joined 10,000, that was really what was differentiating them at the time, and continues to be that differentiator in the sort of functional fitness space, is that it wasn't a brand that was trying to be everything to everyone. And I think a lot of brands in this space try and become that, whether it's their intention or they kind of fall into it. When they're attempting to expand their top funnel, it's just try and kind of cast a wider net. 10,000 took a very converse view on that and said, hey, we're for a person who's really serious about training, who's really serious about becoming better. And that's kind of the brand ethos, is this better than yesterday attitude. And, taking pride in that, and taking pride in being someone who works a little bit differently and maybe works a little bit more intensely than the average person. And, it's just less about comfort and style, and it's more about functionality and performance. And I think that's really what drew me to it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I'm actually thinking of hearing you talk about the shift from, materials. I'm reminded of like Under Armour back in the day,
Yeah.
when they came out with like this fabric that was just like, it was just different. And that's, I think, a huge part of why they had the success, because I was an athlete when that first had been coming out, and it was just like, it was capable of
Well,
doing something no one else could do in terms of fabric.
right.
And so Under Armour is actually a really good example, I think, of a brand necessarily that has it. No shade to Under Armour, but I don't know that they've really ever transitioned into really understanding that branding piece as well as some other companies have. So I think it's really important for brands that even started as a product focused, material focused, silhouette focused, that can't just be what you're standing on anymore, especially in a space like this. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you around 10,000. You have a unique background where you've not only, you're not only helping with the strategy, but you also have a background in copywriting, which I think is really cool. How do you incorporate these ideas of 10,000, what they stand for, this kind of like performance driven athlete that's always trying to improve? How do you translate those ideas and those ideals into the actual strategy? Because I think a lot of brands struggle with that piece.
Yeah, I think we're in an interesting position right now when it comes to the way our team is structured. We have a lot of people who wear a lot of different hats and who do have diverse experience, backgrounds. Like myself, I had a background in copy. I worked in strategy at some agencies. And so like being able to fuse those two things together is super powerful. I think for 10,000, the approach has been, and we're going to kind of continue to create this viewpoint, is making sure that we're speaking to customers or potential customers in a way that's specific to the media with which we're communicating with them. I think a lot of brands, they create campaigns and they just kind of like blast that same messaging across every channel, whether it be email, whether it be paid, whether it be social or OTT or TV or any channel, you're getting a lot of the same messaging. I think for us, the way we've been able to infuse that messaging into the strategy is by being very discerning when it comes to how we're sharing those messages, across different channels, and speaking in a way that feels native to those channels. It doesn't feel forced. And I think that's just kind of the general way that you can really find success communicating with new customers. Cause everyone knows in this game, it's really all about acquisition and kind of creating a bigger top funnel and creating more opportunities for retention, and kind of looking at it from a volume perspective. So I don't know. I bringing my copy expertise and how to craft messaging has really influenced strategy, in that we're very specific channel to channel about our messaging strategy.
Do you have an example you could share with us, or if you would mind sharing with us of that in action? So I think I hear what you're saying, where it's like, hey, if we're sending, an SMS, it's going to have its own unique flavor than if we're sending an email, or if we're doing some sort of social push. Do you have an example maybe you could share of how that comes into action or execution?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for example, take a given product, take our tactical short. It's one of our top products. It sort of came to be through development with elite members of the U.S. Special Operations community. So it's a product that has a real design heritage, that's backed by professionals who push their gear to the absolute limit. And we advertise that product across a wide variety of channels, including our own channels. So, for example, on the website, the tactical short product display page is full of tons of wordy explanations and technical breakdowns of the fabric. And it's sort of, the messaging is more about the heritage of the product and the wear testing that went into it, versus say an ad, a paid meta ad for the tactical short. It's less about the heritage and the technical details and more about what that product can enable you to do. And part of the reason we take that approach on paid is because of the time, right? You have very, very little time to influence someone or persuade someone of something on that channel. So you have to be very direct. You have to be very benefit driven, in your messaging when you have someone's eyes for such a short period of time. So that would just be an example of kind of like how we focus on different aspects of products and product categories depending on the channel we're communicating through.
When it comes to on that topic, because this is something that's super relevant, I think today with brands, is people's attention spans are basically like nanoseconds on social media, and the swipe kind of culture that we have. How does someone like you step into that world and find a way to kind of cut through the noise?
Yeah, I think a lot of brands find themselves really overthinking that. And to your point, it makes sense why they would, because it's so crucial to be able to capture attention in those moments. But personally, I like to keep it pretty simple and be as direct as I can in those moments and try and let our unbelievable graphics and visual department and creative team really take control in those moments. Because the reality is, in a situation like that, it's less about what you say from a messaging strategy perspective and more about how you come across and how you present. So on those paid channels and those performance marketing channels where, you really are competing with every other brand in your set and you have half a second to communicate, I would say marketers should really be doubling and tripling down on the quality of their visuals and the quality of their visual storytelling, as opposed to obsessing over the right 3 or 4 words to use as copy overlay.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I think sometimes even for me, like copywriting is that thing that you get hung up on because you're trying to
Yeah,
find the perfect
people definitely,
words.
and it makes sense why they do. It's a really important part of any marketing mix is what you say and how you say it, and it is very important. But there are channels where I feel like it becomes less important, especially in the sort of, I would say this is sort of like a documentary style marketing landscape that we're living in now, where brands are really putting a lot behind their visuals and they're really, really trying to craft deep and emotional and differentiating and interesting stories for their customers. It's hard to compete with just a line of copy. So you really need to, be very direct, very forward about sort of the values that you're trying to convey and the benefits that your products can bring to the customers in the channels where it's appropriate to do that. And of which there are many. Email, right? I mean, that's a perfect opportunity to, go deep on explanations and be more verbose. Same with product description pages. In fact, it's better, on that channel to be more verbose and be more technical. But yeah, in the paid and performance marketing space, where you're really fighting for those eyes and those fractions of a second, I'd say double and triple down on the visuals.
When it comes to competition in this space, and we've talked about this, it's extremely competitive, and staying ahead of the curve, I'm sure, is something that you guys are always thinking about, whether it's marketing, whether it's how you treat your customers, how you differentiate, whether it's the product, the channels that you push. How do you think about, making sure that you're staying innovative at 10,000, and maybe some examples of how you guys have done that?
Sure. I mean, right off the bat, the first thing that comes to mind when you say the word innovative is really something that's baked into our DNA as a company, which is something that a lot of brands don't do as much of in the space, something that we're really, really passionate about, which is wear testing and athlete-led design, and this culture that we've created of iteration. And that goes for our products, goes for our processes internally, goes for the way we kind of just think and work as a team. But back to the product, I think having products that are so thoroughly wear tested and evolved season over season our design team is unbelievable. The speed with which they're able to wear test, take in feedback from athletes, and make those changes to silhouettes and design features, season over season, that's a real differentiator for us. A lot of brands will just kind of work in a silo where they'll create products for a given use case, and they'll use kind of their notions or their experiences to build and design those products. We don't leave anything to chance at 10,000. We take very, very seriously the feedback of customers, collect it, sort it, and kind of cut it down into usable morsels that we can then use to inform the future of product design. So I think that's one way that we really, really set ourselves apart from the competition. Is it's not just a bunch of random new things you see every season. It's similar products getting tweaked and improved over time. And that's something that our customers really, really like. And you see it in reviews. You see it with these shorts can hold up through anything. I've worn these shorts for 12 days straight and I haven't had to change them. I haven't had to wash them. They still smell great. Like, we really, really take very, very seriously our design and our product development. And I think, as interesting as it would be for some people to hear that, I think that is in and of itself different in this space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost makes me think. So apparel, obviously, huge drop kind of style culture.
Yeah.
Building hype around new product launches is definitely something that's huge in this space. And it sounds like to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys have taken more of a iterative approach around like, hey, the MacBook, right, hasn't
Yeah.
changed in the terms of what it is, but we've invested and made it better. Would you say that kind of aligns with how 10,000 thinks about its product offering?
I think that's a great comparison, actually. And I think there are pros and cons to both. You can maybe generate a little bit more volume when you have many, many more SKUs. And again, going back to that theory of casting that wider net and being everything to everyone, I think that's a possible pro of putting yourself in that position. But for us, we're happy with the fact that we have a minimal array, a minimal assortment of product that just works for every purpose it's designed to work for. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility also when introducing new products and new product lines, because it's not something our customers expect. So when we do have something interesting on the offer, on the horizon, it's sort of a nice surprise. Whereas a lot of brands, they do it so often and they sort of reinvent the wheel so often that it's kind of expected and it's not as special and it loses its significance in some ways. So for us, we take our launches very seriously as well when we have new SKUs and new categories to jump into.
Yeah. I love the sense that like I feel like when you talk about 10,000, it feels to me like it's very functional in the sense of like, hey, this apparel is meant to do this. Like it's meant to actually go out and abuse the hell out of it because you're going to be working so hard in it. Almost like a tool, that's going to get you to where you want to go. As opposed to like, I feel like some other apparel brands, it's much more of like, something that you can feel, so like you can be in it, not necessarily so much action based, but more of like a feeling and an emotion that you can feel, a certain way or look a certain way. And I think that probably resonates with your target because you're going after top athletes, right? Or athletes that are trying to push themselves. So I feel like that small differentiation probably matters a lot to those people that are actually like looking to abuse the shorts. Like they're not trying to get a new pair every 2 weeks. Like they want to push it. They want to see how far they can go.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it does. I would say it definitely resonates with that person, but also it creates opportunities to open that up in people who maybe don't see it in themselves. And now we're getting a little bit philosophical, a little bit esoteric, but I do think telling that story and conveying that message and driving home the importance of self-improvement and becoming better every day and better than who you were yesterday. I think a lot of people maybe don't see themselves in that light, but maybe they want to. And I think that's been one way that we've been able to open the funnel for acquisition is by just putting those messages out there through obviously direct marketing, those messages, but also through content. We've been able to create some unbelievable content, of world records being broken in our gear, of unbelievable athletic feats being accomplished in our gear being tested in some of the most unforgiving environments on the planet, we've been able to kind of enroll people, so to speak, into that mindset. And I think as we continue to grow as a company, that will become more part and parcel to our overall marketing strategy, is trying to kind of nudge people into this world of self-discovery where, they can kind of see themselves in our products and in our marketing.
When it comes to the aspect of kind of the feedback loop that you have with some of your top athletes, can you give us a little peek behind the scenes of how that works? And like, because it sounds like it's very intentional on your behalf of really making that a process within your brand of like, hey, top athletes go out, abuse it, come back, we'll make it better. What does that look like in terms of forming processes around that for the brand itself?
It's pretty open. We have a lot of different ways with which we collect athlete feedback, but it gets as hands-on as athletes coming back to our offices with sample products that we've sent them, and going to our design team during these open sessions and saying, hey, this pocket angle could be a little different. Hey, this trim is a little bit off. It's giving me a hot spot. It's chafing me here. Or, oh, I wish this material was a little bit more breathable because I really pushed it to the limit on a zone 3, trail run that I was on. I was really pushing it and it got a little saturated. So it can get to that level where we have athletes in and out of our office, on a fairly regular basis with notes on product, season over season, just trying to kind of dial them in and perfect them more. But it can also be as, hands off as us going through product reviews, our Yotpo review pages, or going through, user feedback for some of our concept products and our more sort of prototype programs of people just kind of coming in out of nowhere, of chiming in and saying, oh, this pocket didn't hold up the way I wanted it to, or it didn't fit the way fit the items I was looking for it to. And our teams really look super closely at that stuff and audit it for ways they can improve their products. So there's a lot of ways that we kind of run that program, but it is something that is really unique and not something that, I see other brands doing to that level, especially in our size bracket.
And that kind of segues me into, I think what I want to talk around is like the actual community around 10,000, the passionate brand following that you guys have, because I think listening to you talk now, it's fairly easy to understand why that kind of formed. But I'm interested, first question around just getting your take on this idea of what like customer loyalty, which is, a huge word that everybody's trying to understand and create. I wanted to get your take on like, what does customer loyalty look like to 10,000? And what are some ways that you guys are intentionally thinking about that when it comes to specifically your role, which is, brand strategy and copywriting?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to answer the first question, I think customer loyalty to 10,000 is, comprised of these people who see themselves in the brand. They come back again and again when we have new offerings on the table, whether that be a new style altogether or a new variant or a new color or, things of that nature. Those are our loyalists, the people who really believe in the brand. They love the gear and it's all they wear. And there are many of them. When it comes to kind of how we influence loyalty and try and create it, I think it really comes down to creating this openness and this space for people to take part in our community. So we run community workouts in some of our big cities. We, disrupt some of the world's biggest endurance races, from the marathons to the ultra marathons, CrossFit games, you name it. We have a presence there. High Rocks, always trying to kind of meet our people where they are. So, IRL and events and experiential is a big piece of the loyalty puzzle. I think it's going to continue to grow. I think you're not going to see IRL become a less significant part of brands' marketing mix in the future. If anything, it's going to become more and more important, as brands continue to kind of decentralize away from brick and mortar. You're going to need to have that on the ground footprint for people to come and experience your brand. So, yeah, I mean, I would say it can be as simple as that. I mean, there are also other ways that we drive loyalty, and it's through more exclusive product lines. Like, our research is showing us that it's really our returnees and our really engaged customers that are interacting with our limited edition programs. We run limited edition graphics, collaborations with our athletes, people who are really embedded in the in training culture. Know these people. They want to have unique training gear that no one else has that's limited edition. So, we continue to roll some of that stuff out. And then branded partnerships, I think, is another way to kind of grow loyalty. And we have a really robust partnerships program. But bringing in people from other audiences who might not have ever been exposed to 10,000 through synergistic collaborations with other brands. We've collaborated with Therabody, collaborated with Roka, sunglasses company out of Austin. We've collaborated with Filson. It's a heritage retailer that was started in the 1800s, out of the Pacific Northwest. And we have a lot more, on the horizon when it comes to collaborating with other brands. So I think that's another interesting place to create loyalty, is just by bringing in people from other brands who, based on sort of, if you like X brand, you'll love 10,000, right? So I think that's a big opportunity for a lot of brands in the retail game.
Yeah, I feel, going back to your point on in-person and experience, driven marketing, right? I feel like for you guys as a brand that's very activity focused, right? It's hard to be active on the internet,
Right.
So I think that's really cool. I think a lot of brands can learn from that, where if your brand is all about running, hiking, swimming, you got to have some part of your brand that's running, hiking, and swimming, or just some part of your brand has to be existing in the real world for people to really latch on to your mission or your problem statement.
Yeah. So we're always trying to grow our ambassador program. It's open for applicants, always looking for people who embody that better than yesterday mentality and the lifestyle that goes along with it. It's the early morning grind and waking up and working out and getting your recovery in and being a present member of your family and, allowing fitness and wellness as a whole to propel you to become a better person, right? So it's not just about running faster splits or nailing higher PRs in the gym. It's about the ripple effect that can have on your life as a whole. And I think a lot of people really relate to that right now. There's a big social swing, of people who are trying to, better themselves. Look at the literature space is exploding with self-help and business books and stoicism and all these things that are really kind of coming out that people are really resonating with. It's this idea of chasing the better you. And I think, as a brand, we really embody that and are very deliberate in the way that we embody it. So yeah, events is a great
while they're chasing a better. Yep. Sorry for interrupting you. I was just saying, I was making a joke. While they're chasing a better version of themselves, they're obviously wearing 10,000 shorts. So,
Exactly.
I think it's cool because we've had Elizabeth was on here from Absence of Proof, and she really opened my eyes to the fact that people are dropping alcohol and pursuing like more say healthy like versions of nightlife. So like not removing nightlife, but removing some of the alcohol. We've had on Darius last week, who's starting an entire tech founder club that's built around passion for running and using running as sort of a catalyst to start a business. So it's really cool to see some of these themes repeating around using, activity or healthy decisions as not just like a way of, being healthier, but as a way to start, reframing your mind around pursuing something that you've been trying to pursue, like using it as sort of the impetus to achieve your dreams and goals. And I think, that sounds like a lot of what 10,000 is really tapping into.
Absolutely. I might use that.
Awesome. Well, let me ask you this. So knowing that you guys, I almost want to ask about the ambassador program, because this is something that I think a lot of brands like a lot of brands that I talk to are really considering the ambassador program. I know for you guys, you had some pro athletes, so I'm imagining you started there and built around that. But can you give us some perspective around how you started this ambassador program and what it's meant to 10,000?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, our ambassador program didn't start around professional athletes or any athletes of note. Our ambassador program is more of our grassroots approach to community and kind of trying to tap into these, I call them athletes, but many might call them micro influencers, who have a unique perspective on training and training culture, and are dialed in with the way that they create content, and they're just doing it sort of their own accord and grinding it out. We try and become the support system for them. So we provide them with gear. We provide them with, and we help them pay for entry fees for competition. And that's kind of how we have built our ambassador program, is by being there as a support system for those ambassadors. That's separate from our professional athlete team of athletes that we sponsor as a brand. So those guys are kind of the faces of the brand, if you will. And those guys have built very large followings and have built large businesses through their passion for fitness and excellence in sport. Our ambassador program is really our more kind of boots on the ground approach to community. And we tap those guys to lead community workouts and community runs. And, they're kind of helping us, drive some incremental sales through promo code usage and things of that nature, where we've been able to kind of open that program up to anyone who feels that they embody that spirit, that better than yesterday mentality. Those are the people that live within our ambassador program. And they're very, very passionate, not only about their own fitness and their own, physical goals, personal goals, but also just about the kind of way of life that we embody as a brand. So we look for people who are already kind of easing their way into that mentality, so to speak, and who clearly embody it. We try and find those people where they are and hook them up. So our ambassador program is it's on the eve of a huge rebrand. So look out for that. We have interesting new incentives for ambassadors coming along. So if anyone's interested, out there on becoming an ambassador, there will be many opportunities to, find yourself on the other side of a DM with me.
That's awesome. So this is just more so I'm personally curious around this ambassador community. If you had to start one first, if you're a brand, do you find the individuals that can kind of join an ambassador program and then build a community around them? Do you start by building a community and then find people within the community that you can uplift? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
I mean, I feel that your community is only as strong as its members. So I feel you really have to start with the members and go out and find those people who really embody your values and your missions as a brand, and create community around them. And I think that's what we did. I mean, the ambassador program was live before I started at 10,000, but it's grown quite significantly since I've been there. And I think it's because we've really ratcheted up the vibe at the events, and really focusing on curating and creating experiences where people feel comfortable, where people feel included, and where people just kind of feel like it's all about the community, and it's all about, that activity that they're doing together. So I think the people really bring most of that energy to it. And then we just happen to, be very, very locked in and entrenched in the fitness community and in training culture, that we know people who own and operate gyms or own and operate run clubs that are already successful. And we just kind of push our people into those spaces, and partner with those people to create memorable events. We also have, all the good stuff that any brand should have at any event, which is like free good giveaways and goodies and refreshments and brand partnerships that offer recovery and all of those things, always trying to dig a little bit deeper into what we call world building. And I know that's a huge topic in brand marketing today, is like, how can you go beyond selling products and having events? How can you wrap it all up in this world that you create and curate with every single touch point and texture, and, just kind of create something where people can really sink their teeth in? I think that's becoming more and more important. And I think you're seeing a lot of brands, in the performance apparel space, but also just the apparel space at large, really taking that approach. And it's something that we're definitely trying to level up as well, is just like, it's not just content, it's not just product. How does the real world sort of come in and play its part as well?
Yeah, that's a term I haven't heard. So world building, that's a term I typically hear with like writing.
Yep.
like world building, or like movies, right? Where you're kind of like creating a world first that people feel like, hey, this is real. Now I can
Right.
experience it in a way that's authentic. So I love that you've taken that that idea. I'm not sure that you've taken that, but now it makes sense. Is like your brand is trying to create something that feels authentic, so people can live in it and feel
Yep.
like, hey, I want to play this character potentially or
Yeah.
play out this vision inside
Right.
of 10,000.
Exactly. It's like I don't want to just wear the shorts from the brand. I want to be the person that the brand is sort of
Yeah.
elevating, creating, and emphasizing. And I think a lot of people are looking for community right now. I mean, even in episodes you've had on your show, I've heard plenty of people talk about the fact that it's not very surprising how important community marketing has become, because it's a bigger trend. It's just how important community has become. People have moved away
Hmm.
from some of the more traditional things that have held together communities in the past, and they're looking for new ways to do it. And brands are trying to get in on the action and be that thing for people. And I think brands have that power, and when I think about world building as a brand, I think about arguably the greatest fashion brand of all time, which is Ralph Lauren, and how they sort of became such a behemoth as a brand was through world building. I mean, they had ads for Ralph Lauren clothing that didn't have any people in them, that didn't have any clothing in them. It was a photo of a scenic barn, for example, right? That's not as
Mm.
minimal as everyone can or even should go, but I think it speaks to the power of world building from a branding perspective, that it's not just about the product; it's about the lifestyle that goes along with the product. And I think you'll see that continue to become a greater and greater trend as the years go by.
Yeah, I want to double click into world building one more. I have one more question on that. So obviously, it's fairly easy to create this kind of world when you're creating these events because people are living it. They feel it, they touch it,
Right.
they're experiencing it. When it comes to digital world building, much more challenging. How do you think about maybe some of the
Absolutely.
new technologies coming around AR, VR, AI personalization? Like, how does 10,000 or how do you think that will kind of impact the world building process for brands?
I think it'll make it a lot more accessible for a lot of brands and customers, of having that ability to step into spaces without having to travel, without having to go anywhere, without having to do anything. You'll be able to kind of tap into communities. I think you'll see a lot of brands start to utilize AR and VR retail spaces, where you can go and look at the product and see it sway in the breeze. You won't be able to feel it in your hand yet, but you will be able to enter a space that's fully curated and fully immersive in the world that a given brand is trying to convey and create. And I think that will be uh, that will create a paradigm shift in the way that brands are able to create worlds, create lifestyles, curate new collections. There's no telling, what these new technologies will be able to do, but for me, it just looks like an infinite realm of possibility.
Yeah, I'm already thinking of just like virtually stepping into a storefront and just seeing everything that the brand has built in terms of its world and like the athletes using it over here, the pillars of what you stand for over here, maybe some of the experiential stuff over here. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I think that you guys are have the right idea though, where it's like even if in the future we can do everything digitally, I think it'll be the brands that still understand at the core connection stems from like actually just being there. And I hope that brands continue to do that, despite technology shifting us more and more digitally.
I think I think they will. I think it's as you perfectly put it. I think there will always be a desire for real world experiences. Even when we have digital worlds, that we're able to enter, at the drop of a hat. I think it will still be important how you show up in the real world, where people can come and touch and feel and be with you, and share in that camaraderie of a shared experience, that isn't through a screen or through a lens. I think that will always there will always be a premium for that. And yeah, I think I don't think brands should move away from that. Absolutely not.
So before we got on this call, I know that I forget what we were talking about, but there was something said about hot takes, and you had mentioned like 10,000 is all about that kind of world of, hey, to being bold, taking a stand. And I know one of the hot takes, I guess not really a hot take, but something you had said earlier was around copywriting versus vision or versus
Yeah.
imagery, which I thought was really cool. But I wanted to give you a chance as we're kind of winding up, if there's any other hot button issues or maybe contradictory viewpoints that you have when it comes to, whether it's digital marketing or whether it's copywriting. I'm really curious to get to hear as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, besides the copy versus art take, which I do really stand behind that almost across every channel, which is strange to hear a copywriter say maybe, but putting that higher premium on the visuals, just given that all of our channels are just becoming increasingly visual, I think you're going to see a little bit less of a just desire or worry about copy as much. I think it'll still be important in things like script writing and things of that nature. But another hot take, let's see, more hot digital marketing takes. I think sort of what I said at the beginning of the call. I think there's a big trend right now in inclusivity and being everything to everyone, and wanting to be a brand that stands for equality and equity, and those are things we want. Those are things that really everyone wants. I think it really comes down to how you express that and how you manifest that, because I think a lot of brands can get really lost in the noise when they're really preoccupied with trying to be inclusive to everybody. Not to say you shouldn't be, but I think you resonate more with particular groups. And I think there are plenty of brands that, have maybe gone a little bit too far when it comes to trying to open the aperture so wide that they suddenly they at one point they kind of become meaningless and they lose their edge or their perspective that makes them unique as a brand in the pursuit of that more inclusive branding. So find a subset of customers
I definitely
that lights you up, right? I would say find that subset of people that really lights you up, that really aligns with your values, and double and triple down on them and make them the focus of your brand. And that's not to say you can't open the aperture in the future, but when you're establishing yourself as a brand, I think it's really important to have like a very clear POV and a very clear voice and speak to a very clear subset of people.
Yeah, I was going to say that resonates with me because I do think we live in a world that tries to paint a very broad brush across everybody sometimes. And I think that has some positives, right? We're all humans at the end of the day. We want to make sure we're inclusive. But I think the human experience itself, like part of what makes us human is our differences. Part of what makes us human is how unique we are. And so I feel like by painting broad brushstrokes, we're almost like painting over the parts of people that they're most passionate about. And so I love your take on that. I think brands can learn a lot from just tapping into authentic humanity, which is its uniqueness, its difference, our, even all the way down to our sequences of DNA, right? It's uniqueness. And so if a brand can capture, hey, we're unique, we understand you're unique, that's a much more powerful force, in my opinion, for driving things like community.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people would hear that and say, oh, you only want to advertise to one type of person, or I would say it's the exact opposite. I only want to advertise to the people that want to live this lifestyle that I'm trying to create as a brand strategist and that we're trying to create as a brand. We're looking for people who are passionate. We're looking for people who are driven. That's who we speak to. That's our customer. That knows no demographic bounds. They are passionate and driven and dedicated people from every creed and color that you can imagine on the planet. So I think it's more about having a clear perspective on like who you are trying to speak to and who you're trying to bring in versus just speaking to everybody because you think it'll give you the biggest opportunity to acquire new customers. Because you kind of lose the soul and the spirit of the brand when you do that.
Yeah, I went to Planet Fitness a few weeks ago. I was traveling and
Mm.
went to Planet Fitness. Honestly, the gym was incredible, like all very new stuff, but I'm not sure if you've ever been. They have the kind of like no lunk. They've got this kind of messaging of like, hey, take it easy, relax. So it's almost
Yeah.
like if you're Planet Fitness, like, and you're building this world of, it's a very specific vision they have, right? It's more for people that are trying to, take their first step or just start to exercise and they don't want to be intimidated, right? And there's a lot of people that would enjoy that. But why would it make sense for Planet Fitness to go and target, just like extreme fitness hardos, right? Because like they're going to come in and they're going to, that's just not it. So I agree with you. I think every brand, they have a world they're building, and you don't want to pay to send the wrong person there because then you're hurting the people that were supposed to live there in the first place, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you can kind of dilute some of your loyalists out too when you open it. When you open things up too wide, you start to lose some of the people that are really core to the brand. So yeah, I don't know
Hmm.
if that's a hot take. I don't know if that's a super hot take. I think it's just something that's against maybe the trends in marketing right now. Um, but like I think like anything, it'll be a 20-year cycle where you'll start to see the pendulum swing back to this more sort of core based marketing. That's how it was 20 years ago. Now it's a little bit more, inclusive marketing. And I think you'll start to see the pendulum swing back to brands starting to realize that their people are really core to their business. They expect a certain type of product, they expect a certain type of story, and they're gonna start to swing back in the other direction to provide that.
Awesome. So we're rounding things out. I know you got a hard stops, but I wanted to give you a chance for people that want to learn more about 10,000. I know you mentioned there's an ambassador program, which honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
hey, I might have to start strapping up to get into that. But how can people learn, hear more about, get more involved with 10,000? And yeah, then we'll wrap it up.
Here. Our website, first and foremost, is 10,000.cc. We have socials, obviously 10,000.cc everywhere. Come follow us. Come check out what we have going on the horizon. We also do have a brand partnership with Lifetime Fitness. We're the official men's apparel sponsor of a variety of some of their core class programming and their personal training department as well. So you'll see our gear in there if you ever find yourself in a Lifetime. We do community events on a monthly basis. So keep a lookout on social media and the email list if you subscribe for more information on those. But yeah, I mean, all the usual ways, people can reach out, come become part of the brand, and look out for more on ambassador program as well. It's coming soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Josh. Super excited. Lots of good content. I think here some people will love to learn about. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jared. Have a good one.